What's up, everyone? Dan Rivers here at Rivers Capital Group for the first annual State of the Economy discussion here in Charleston. I got some amazing people to have a conversation with today, so I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, guys, for joining. Wanted to get everybody together here to talk about the state of the economy here in Charleston. I'm super excited, actually, about this. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys want to take a quick second and just introduce yourself?
Kelly Garrett, originally from the upper part of the state of South Carolina, live now in the beautiful Charleston, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Married for over 22 years. Own a hard money lending company called Rehab Wallet. We did a little over $220 million in the last 3 years, 1,113 loans on the street, and have raised over $100 million in order to do that $200 million. We do 6-month terms, a lot of bridge debt, a lot of transactional debt, and raise money in a debt fund, and then lend it out, and that delta is our business plan.
Whit McCarthy. I am CEO of Consistent Capital, partnered up with Kelly to launch a new lending platform, primarily on the heels of what they offer their clients, long-term financing products, DSCR loans, and then ultimately get into some other types of financing products, ground-up construction, multifamily value-add bridge, multifamily stabilized, so more institutional product suite than what Rehab Wallet offers, complementing what they're doing.
And I'm a borrower of that money. I'm on the operations side, Tim Bratz, mostly commercial real estate on the multifamily side. So I've built a portfolio, transacted over 6,000 doors, but we have probably about 3,500 in our portfolio today, 12 different states, and mostly in kind of that workforce housing that ranges from B- to A-class type of property, but not really luxury, not getting into the tougher areas. Been in real estate for 15 years and have tried many different aspects of it, all different asset classes. We own some stuff in self-storage, office, retail, high-end Airbnbs, and we've done development stuff too. So I also have a coaching business that teaches people how to scale rental portfolios. So kind of understand what it's like out there for people who don't have any doors and they're trying to get their first 10. I understand what it's like to go from 10 to 100. I understand what it's like to go from 100 to into the thousands.
Awesome.
I'm Danny Randazzo, managing partner of PassiveInvesting.com. Grateful to be here today and partners with Whit on our lending business, partners with Kelly, partners with Dan in another business venture, and hopefully we'll be doing something soon together. There's
hang out
no
and drink.
reason not to. But what I get to do at PassiveInvesting.com, we have multiple business units. We have about 3,500 Class A multifamily apartments, about $1 billion or just over $1 billion AUM there. We have a couple hundred million, couple million square feet of self-storage facilities around the country, valued maybe $250 million AUM there. We have our lending businesses, and then we have about 30 express car washes. Done some development, done some back in the day, have done some Airbnbs, some foreclosures, some short term. So really getting started kind of one deal at a time, and then ultimately getting into this more institutional quality space. And live in Charleston, married, couple of kids, dog, and loving life.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys came and did this today with me. Honestly, when I first moved to Charleston, this, I met Danny at the breakfast meetup and Kelly and a few others in 2019 down at 60 Bull Cafe.
Yep.
And I owe a lot to both of you for getting me into real estate investing and just changing my mind and my outlook on life and believing in myself. Thank you, Kelly, for that. But I just thought it was awesome. I mean, you guys are all here local to Charleston doing big things, whether it's on the lending side or building a real estate portfolio. So I just think it's awesome to kind of hop in here, ask these questions, and really get your opinions on how you kind of see the market, where we're going, where we stand, and what you guys are doing in your businesses to help protect you and protect your investors. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start off with the first question. With the interest rates changing, cap rates kind of expanding, uncertainty in the market, I'm going to start with you two, Danny and Tim. How do you structure your syndication deals to align with investors' interest while minimizing the risk and optimizing the value?
So Aligning your interests is very easy. We invest as an LP in every single deal that we do. You know, typically looking back, I am personally, and my business partner Dan, we're probably the, you know, one of the top 5 dollar valued LP investors in the deal. And so, you know, our philosophy is having just sound investments where you can protect your money and also have an opportunity to make it along the way. And so, you know, that's one alignment of interest. We have a great article that we've written. My business partner Dan did this about the 7, it might now be up to 8 red flags. So if someone is trying to be an investor with anybody or starting a business or partnering with someone, these red flags would be very important, and just a useful tool to make sure you're thinking about all of these different aspects. Whether you're investing as an LP or investing in a business as a partner, I think these red flags are relevant. So that would be another resource there. And the second part of your question was around interest rates and what else?
Just basically interest rates, cap rates kind of adjusting, and how you're basically still be able to invest while giving your clients, your investors good returns.
Yeah.
But hedging risk. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, you know, over the last 12 months, we've looked at a ton of different deals and we've bought very, very, very few. And that's a combination of, specifically in multifamily, the deals that we look at, these are institutional size deals, typically $50 million to $100 million, you know, 200 to 350 units in size. So these are big deals. We're typically dealing with other institutional investors. And so I say we've bought very few deals because there is a gap between what a seller wants to accept and what a buyer is willing to pay. And as a buyer, when we evaluate deals, we're taking into account what the current interest rate is, what the cap rate is, having a conservative business plan and exit strategy. And so, you know, in this type of environment, I think our asset class, these institutional quality, well-located deals, kind of 15 minutes to Whole Foods, they're going to be few and far between. We'll probably find 1 or 2 or maybe a few over the next 12 to 24 months, and that's just the nature of the business. We're just not going to change our criteria to go after deals that we don't like as much just to meet returns. And so I think patience is probably the key word there to, you know, how do you protect your investors? You know, number one, we've solved for the alignment of interest by investing alongside them. And then number 2, just be patient in finding a deal that fits, and, you know, don't change your criteria, don't change your underwriting, just be conservative, and you're not going to buy as much, but you'll find a couple of good deals in there, and just kind of keep going. You know, in any type of market condition, I think there's good opportunities out there. You just may have to look a lot harder or a lot longer or at a lot more volume of deals until you find one. And so, you know, to someone who is just trying to get started in the real estate game, I still think you need to go and buy a deal as soon as you can, using your patience, using your conservative nature, have a mentor in your corner who can help advise you along the way, but getting that experience of your first deal is going to be a huge benefit to your long-term success. And you know, if you look back at kind of market cycles, we're probably in this low or slow or recessionary period, and you know, what comes after you go down? You go up. So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we'll just see when that is, but we'll get there.
In 2008, I remember watching people who were worth millions of dollars and some of them went bankrupt, and some of them today are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. How does the same economy and the same product, right, affect two different people differently? Because it's not about these external factors, it's about the internal business plan that you're following, to their points. And by the way, like, success leaves clues, right? There's a reason that all three of us, like, there's a solid plan that you can follow in order to build wealth. And that's, it's things like buying at a discount instead of paying a retail price. It's things like not speculating on real estate instead of, hey, I think I can buy it at this price and tomorrow it's gonna be worth this much, and then it's not, right? And then, like, that's how people lose their pants and when economies shift. Not buying for cash flow. You can see that all of us invest typically for cash flow because that's kind of the lowest common denominator of whether or not a deal will work, right? If it'll cash flow, the beauty of rental real estate is if it cash flows, you can ride out any sort of economic storm, right? Maybe you want to get your investors their money back in 5 years and maybe it takes 7 years, but at least their capital is not at risk, right? Like, you can at least say, hey, worst case scenario, we're just going to leave it here until the market comes back and interest rates drop and we pay down a little bit more principal, the value appreciates with some rent bumps. And you're in a great spot if you have time on your side. That's the key, right? To Danny's point, like, do not stray from the underwriting. I see people underwriting deals saying, oh, maybe I can scale back the CapEx, the renovations. Like, no, that's a fixed cost. You can't change that.
Your
right?
inputs are your inputs. Don't
Right.
change the
You
inputs
can't
to make the deal work.
No, well, just not do. Well, then you're not going to make as much in rent, and then it's going to adversely affect operations, and then it's like there's all these other things that they don't change the inputs on. If they do change that one, they think they can still make the same amount. No, it's not. Really, the only thing that's a variable is what are you buying it at, right? Now there's other inputs, but like the value add component, I think is, well, before I dive into that, having stress testing the underwriting, right? Like he was mentioning, not diverging from that underwriting and almost trying to kill a deal. And that's what Danny does. Danny kills deal after deal after deal, and then if you can't kill it, that's when they buy them, right? And that's why he has such a good foundational element. I also love their asset class. They're just buying good properties in good areas, right? That you can get good financing in place. And there's all these other variables that are changing with interest rates, with insurance costs, with supplies, with labor costs, and all these other things. They have predictability in their business because they're buying good properties in good areas with good fixed financing in place that isn't variable, right? And it allows them to have a lot of predictability in their business and have long-term plans. So I think those are all fantastic things to discuss as far as like risk mitigation goes. That's like the kind of stuff that we look for, right? Like, and I think, you guys were all in business after 2008, and there's like little things that you follow, right? Like new opportunities, like short sales was a thing, and then there was REO bank-owned properties, and then there was loan modifications and taking over,
Tons of foreclosure.
Yeah, foreclosure. Like there was always like a new gimmick or a new thing, and sometimes you could follow that path of lesser resistance. And it's kind of like an arrow in your quiver, right? It's another tool in the tool belt, how you can take down a deal. And what I would bring it all full circle with is like the ability to understand the levers you can pull that make a deal work or not work, right? Like there's things that we can do and look at a property that says, hey, somebody else might look at just the rental income and the laundry income and leave it at that. But when I think there's a fresh perspective that's like kind of the younger generation starting to bring of like, listen, I can take the tenant list of 300 people that are all this Whole Foods type demographic, and I can take that, I know who's got pets, and maybe I do an affiliate setup with some pet company that does e-commerce with pets and offer that to the tenant base, and I can monetize the list more than just with rents, right, and with laundry income. Maybe you start thinking outside the box and saying, oh, I have this other square footage in the back of the parking lot that is not usable. I can go and drop pods there and have storage there for the tenants. Maybe they pay an extra $150 a month for storage, pods in the back, and I make an arbitrage on that. And like there's creative things that you can think outside the box and figure out, how do I increase income, decrease expenses that other people aren't thinking about? And that's the only thing that you should be changing in order to try to make a deal work. Like, hey, maybe I can move the utilities to a different supplier that has a lower per kilowatt cost than this other one. I can reduce electric, I can install LED lights, I can do low flow toilets and faucets and shower heads. And there's things like that where you can pull levers, but not on, I think I can get a little bit more rent than the guy across the street who has newer units and nicer units. And like, no, you can't, right? And I think people they believe their own bullshit sometimes. And it's like the gambler who only remembers their wins, right? They don't remember all the losses. And I see that a lot with investors not following a good business plan, a good blueprint.
And I love how you said like the creativeness of figuring out different ways to always be, another way that we can be creative on bringing in revenue for the business. You're going to want to be conservative on that, obviously building a new concept like the e-commerce for the dog park, but it might be an added
Well, to me,
stream,
that's the ones that prevail. Those two
Yeah.
people you're talking about, 2008, I was right in the middle of it. 2008 were the ones that prevailed in the same market during the same economic storm. It is working a little bit longer. Maybe it is finding a new management staff. Maybe it is hiring somebody like you're doing, what you're doing right now, at a certain location that's just not working out. You got to make some changes. And those are the two people. That's the difference. The other one was the ones that's just increasing rents, and they just gave the keys back to the bank.
Too
And
hard,
too hard, too much
I'm
work.
done.
I can't be done by 4 o'clock to be
Someone
on the
did this
beach.
to me.
Exactly. You're victimized. And the other person that prevailed was the person that said, hey, I'll go open up today. I'll go see what's going on. I'll go want my properties. I'll go see if there's trash. I'll go see some things. I'll make some decisions. I'll make some changes. Those are the persons that prevailed and made it through it.
Be patient, be proactive.
What are you guys doing, to piggyback off that, what are you doing in the lending world to kind of adapt or make some changes and adjustments to protect yourself?
Are you guys seeing people default on loans?
We have had, at Rehab Wallet, we have had one default, and at Pig Fund, one default so far. However, I think I mentioned we've had over 1,100 loans on the street. I'm not silly in thinking it's going to stay that way. If we have some people that are having a little trouble. But again, we're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to work to help investor A go meet investor B that's having a little problems today. Maybe y'all can work something out and you take over his loan. So we're doing some modifications. I'm not going to call it. I'm just talking about some relationship building.
You guys understand it. You get it. You're not working in some cubicle and you
No,
don't
Yeah,
see
exactly.
it.
it's
You know what I
like-
mean? Like you guys have been
I'm behind the
there.
desk. We're doing site visits. We're working out. I mean, Saturday, I was doing like 5 site visits on purpose. I enjoy looking at real estate.
I
I
know.
don't flip it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying going around, and then I'm calling somebody and saying, hey, you've already, your loan's maturing in the end of September, but we're only sheetrock in, right? Get busy with it. So things like that, again, just in case, well, not just in case, but the market is turning. I would be ridiculous to think that we can do the same thing today as we could a year ago. We're not going to sit in the ivory tower and just delegate. We're going to roll up our sleeves.
Yeah, it's a harder condition out there, and so borrowers are being presented with a harder challenge of longer days on market, costs went up, pricing is holding where it's at, and so if we can help them
Yeah.
with some strategic decision,
Sometimes they're just in the weeds and they can't see the full
Exactly.
picture because they're in the frame, and you guys are able to offer that 20,000-foot perspective and say, have you thought about this? Let me make a connection here. And I
Yeah.
think you guys can almost help that, and from an advisory standpoint, which is why you guys dominate in that
well, and that's why I think it's so important. Like, real estate is a very simple business. Nothing that the cumulative 5 of us have encountered is a unique challenge to us and us only. Someone else out there has gone through every single challenge and more than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And so that's why I think having a mentor in your corner or someone with a little bit more experience, whether you're going to the lender to say, hey, Kelly, I know you've personally flipped 200 plus houses. Can you help me? This is my second, or this is my 10th one. I've never had this happen, but could you believe it? My contractor quit and disappeared. Okay, no problem. Here's a new contractor. Like, easy problem. I know.
Believe it?
Can you believe it? They walked out and took all the tools. No.
In the flats.
It comes back to those two people that you brought up. It's the person who, it's okay to be scared or worried about a challenge, but just keep moving forward and ask for help because someone's been through it before.
And be willing to be vulnerable too. Be willing to be vulnerable to ask for help. I think a lot of people have pride get in the way. I've seen that quite a bit. And the people, I know that was the word of the year for me a couple years ago. And I know my personal and relationship with my wife and everything got, it's hard to be, but if you are and you're willing to say, hey, I may be messing up here. I need help. I'm struggling. You're going to get so much further than if your pride kills you.
And Rehab Wallet's so good at what they do because they have that borrower-centric approach and wanting to make things work. You know, there may be a point in time where things just can't work, right?
That's right.
And a lender needs to do what a lender needs to do and move forward in the way that they need to move forward. But I can tell you from a lender's perspective, don't duck your lender's calls. I mean, don't, especially when it comes to the servicing, you have a maturing loan, you are at the end of your term. Proactive communication goes an incredible way for continuing to maintain a strong relationship. I've seen it time and time again. In my prior life, ran a sales group that originated $10 billion worth of loans, and a lot of those were fix and flip loans. And such a radical difference between the borrowers that proactively communicate and say, "Hey, I'm coming up at the end of my term. I had a contractor walk out on me. My scope of work changed. We found a foundational issue, whatever it may be." If they're proactively communicating, we were always going above and beyond wanting to make it work, figuring out how we can support them with these changes, with additional modification or extension. The ones that cower and hide because they're afraid of the proactive communication with their lender are the ones that ultimately fail. So I think being open with your partners, right? A lender is a partner of yours in that transaction. It's just so critically important.
Anybody who's been doing business for any level of time understands that there's L's that come with W's, right? And so it's like you communicate. Like I think about what is it? American Greed. Dude, as soon as all those people go to jail, as soon as they stop answering phone calls, every single one of them. Oh, yeah. Like that's the recurring theme.
Yep.
Some of them were just bad people. Some of them were good people who just made bad decisions, right? But they all stopped answering the phone call, and they all ended up going to jail because they stopped answering phone calls.
Yes.
Like have the shitty conversation, have the difficult conversation, and I'll tell you what, it's never as bad as you typically make it out to be in your head, and it's usually, hey, they actually want to meet me halfway, right? Like if you can show that you're willing to take a step, typically the lender will take 2 steps for you, right? And kind of meet you in the middle. Or even go above and beyond in order to help make that stuff happen. But you got to communicate. You got to have the phone calls.
To your question though, so generally in the lending world right now, I can tell you that as of last month, we hit a historic low for the last 17 years of serious mortgage delinquency, which is pretty incredible.
Historic low.
Historic low over the last 17 years. So it's serious mortgage delinquency is way down, right? I think there's so many people that got in with good interest rates and their properties have appreciated, and most people have the ability to exit and based on the home price appreciation of where they're at if they get into a situation. So
you call it serious mortgages?
Serious mortgage delinquency typically.
Like what is that?
Typically defined 60 plus days down.
60 plus days.
It's typically defined as that. Some people will say it's 90 plus, some will say it's the point of which a notice of default is issued.
Got it.
60 plus is typical.
And I think a lot of people thought
Behind in their payment.
Yes. So missed 2 consecutive payments.
I think a lot of people thought forbearance, I know I was one of them kind of trying to get lists and everything, thought forbearance was going to be a big factor for people for foreclosures to rise and for delinquencies to start really picking up. I know I was listening to Housing Wire the other day and they were talking about this exact opposite, pretty much all forbearance. It's really, most of those people either caught up, restructured their debt, or whatever the case is. Like that number is extremely low considering how many people filed for forbearance.
People expected to see like a 10% request on all loans for forbearances during COVID, and it ended up being less than 1%. So it's I think the perception of how things are going to work and how things actually shook out, just 2 very different things. Yeah.
Next question, I want to kind of go over to you guys because it has to do with, obviously we know inflation, some of the factors. It's devaluation of money, it's an influx of credit. There's a lot of factors that cause inflation. I know the Feds have said they've kind of got under control. We'll see what that really means. But on your side of the business and everything, how do you think how do you think it's going to affect the credit markets, especially with regards to loans for either bigger commercial deals or smaller deals?
The Fed is meeting today.
Yep.
Right, and today's what?
Right now, I think.
September 20th. So they're meeting today, but I think the expectation is there will be no further adjustments through the end of the year. Is at least what the sentiment I'm gathering based off of everything I've heard. So I think that's positive, right? Still, I don't think they have a full control and handle on the situation, but I think we're in a decent situation through end of year, and hopefully we'll start to see some changes in 2024. But it's hard to say, man. No one has a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Right.
So the consistent capital side, those are the 30-year fixes. Those are the ones that could be affected. And with your answer to your question, so I wanted him to go first. But as far as the bridge transactional debt, it's pretty just fixed, right? It's going to be a fixed whatever we decide we want to go into, or what the market's calling for. So it's really not affecting Rehab Wallet as much. And so it might be affecting, like we increased rates in April, but we also increased the rates that we're paying out to our investors. So our investors maybe could go into a T-bill for 4.5. So we were at 6. So we as a partner sat down and said, let's raise this for our investors. Good for them, right? But I had to go over here and raise rates here on the Rehab Wallet or the bridge and the transactional debt. But it is very static.
For
So
the
it's not
consumer,
rising.
though, I think to understand kind of where markets are going, I think the best indicator to track is the 10-year Treasury,
Yeah.
right? So that's one thing that have on your phone, like on your market watch updates. Just track that and get an understanding of kind of where markets are moving. Any updates or changes to interest rates inside of the lending environment are going to just trail that change of the 10-year. But prior to last year, the thought of a 10-year being above 4%
Right.
was insane. I mean, it would have said you're crazy, but here we are, like 4.223 today. So, but it is a really interesting time in the lending marketplace. I think there's been a dislocation between, the banks and the regional specifically. They've really kind of stepped out of this space of business purpose lending, I'll call it, right? So, lending to real estate investors, I don't think have a competitive bid right now in the marketplace. Like, we as a business purpose lender only focused on deploying capital to real estate investors. I'll speak to like the DSCR loans, the rental property loans. Essentially, you're underwriting the cash flow of the property. You're not looking at personal income. The spread between a conventional interest rate and what we're able to offer our customers is 1%. I mean, it's ridiculously
It's
small.
not going to impact the deal
Yeah.
really one way or the other from an underwriting perspective.
I'm talking conventional owner-occupied rates, which is a crazy difference from where we have been historically. So
There's usually at least 2 to 3% difference when
Oh,
the
yeah.
market was good. I mean, it was about 5.5% as opposed to 2.9.
It's because there's a lot of institutional appetite for this type of paper. The type of mortgages that are being written in the business purpose lending space, massive amount of institutional appetite for that. So that's a good buy for Wall Street parties right now.
Buying those notes
Yeah,
on the back end. Gotcha.
exactly.
Yeah.
From an operator standpoint, I had a phone call with a guy 2 days ago. He's like, I just can't bear the idea of paying somebody 12% for short-term money or 14% for hard money, or paying my investors 12%. I'm like, dude, if the deal's good, then it doesn't matter what the interest rate, right, that you're paying is. You need to find better deals then, because you're constraining yourself based on your hard-nettedness and the ego side of things that you
Exactly.
mentioned too.
Yep.
Because I'm not going to go do a deal and make $60,000 because the principle of paying somebody else 13%. Like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Like, go out and do that deal. And I think that's a limiting belief in a lot of people's minds. It's like, dude, if the return on investment is there, you should go out and do that deal. Like, if it's a good deal, right? It's a good property, good area, and the downside risk is minimal. Like, don't worry about the interest rate that you're paying, right? Like right
Short
now,
term, especially, typically all that is very, very short term.
exactly.
And especially if you're long on that asset, right? I mean, you're going to have the opportunity to refi when
Yeah.
rates drop back down.
Well, I'll give you an
Either way.
example. Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. I heard you say this on my podcast. Actually, is like you're marrying the property, you're dating the rate. So if you can use interest rates to your benefit in negotiating a great deal on a property, buy it with a 7% interest rate. Who cares? And in 3 to 5 years, you refinance. You got it at a low enough basis because of the obstacles in the market, which isn't really an opportunity, to your point. In every market has obstacles and obstacles and opportunities. But like, I don't know, I bought some townhouses or land and then built townhouses, and we're all into them for, I don't know, $9 million right now. And they're worth probably 16 to 17 million dollars, and they cash flow like crazy. And I'm going through the process of going from a construction loan, like out of 40 loans that I have, 3 are bridge loans, right? And so 2 of them are construction, and that are coming due this year. And so on that one, I talked to the lender. Hey, listen, I need 6 more months because things got delayed, but we can refinance in tranches. And so they're going to give me a loan on the first third of the portfolio, another third around January, another third in April. So 1, I communicated with them.
Exactly where my head went.
Right. 2, they gave me a term sheet, and they're like, well, guess what? We do permanent financing as well. It's like a build to rent kind of a thing. And we'll give you a term sheet. And they gave me a term sheet, and I got it yesterday. It's like 7.6%. Well, guess what? They're still appraising it. Even at like 55% LTV, I'm able to get all my money off the table, pay back my investors. They gave me a couple different options on 30-year amortization or interest only, changing the payment by a little bit, changing the loan amount by a little bit. I can get all my cash and my investors' cash off the table, put fixed financing in place for the next 5 years, wait for the market to shift, watch rents continue to grow. If I decide to go with the interest only, then it's interest only, I have more cash flow. If it's principal pay down on the amortization, I can pay down a little bit of principal over the next 5 years. But it's like I have a fixed, and it makes sense, and
The deal
cash
works.
flow is
Yeah,
positive,
it works.
and I'm not pushing back on it because they're willing to
No.
work with me. I'm willing, and at the end of the day, if I could have limitless 7% money, I would buy the whole world, right? Like I could do anything with 7%. If I had 12% limitless money, I could buy the whole world because I know how to make deals work, and I know the levers to pull in order to make that make sense.
Yeah.
So like that's the key. It's like, instead of worrying about all these external factors, focus on you, focus on getting better, focus on learning creative financing and learning how to structure deals, how to be a better operator, and how to negotiate better acquisition costs, or bring financing or bring construction management in-house instead of paying some contractor and relying on it. Like there's so many different variables that you can control the controllables and don't worry about the things outside of your control.
I think at the end of the day, I think what we're all saying is we are very bullish on just real estate generally,
Yeah.
right? I think as long as you're buying with the right fundamentals, right, and you
Show
don't
me
sacrifice
something
those,
better, toe to toe, man.
Exactly. So get into those deals. If you can make those deals work right now, get into them now. Get that, yes, higher rate money on there for the time being. You're dating that rate. When the rates drop, you refi. When those rates drop in the marketplace, do you know how many people are coming off the sidelines and going to start buying? Actual homeowners that they can then qualify for these loans again. Values are going to increase like crazy at that point in time once rates drop, because the buyer pool opens up to 10x of what it is right now. People that are sidelined as a result of not qualifying for these loans. So I think get into the deals now if you can. If the numbers work, hold until that point in time.
And what's the worst case
Refi.
scenario? You're holding a cash flowing property that's a good property in a good area.
Yeah.
Right? Like if that's the worst case scenario,
Exactly.
it's a pretty good worst case scenario.
And sell at that time, or refi based off of the improved value of everything that's happened in the marketplace. Get all your cash out once you get your tax-free money out as a cash out refi. Your cash on cash return goes to an unlimited infinity number, right? If you get all your money back out. So it's a no-brainer. If you can get into the deals now, get into the deals now.
If they're cash flow positive, like nobody ever talks about the principal pay down, right? And the forced savings of just making a mortgage payment every single month and watching your loan chip away at the principal balance. Like that's a component of your income and of your net worth and your personal financial statement growing. Everybody thinks like cash flow or this or that. Like I get excited about principal pay down, and then just these increment. I don't look for 8 to 10% rent bumps. I look for 2 to 4, right, depending on the market, and that's what I. But if you just do simple math on 10 years of owning a property and watching a 3% rent bump and a normal only make your minimum payment on a 30-year amortization, the first 10 years alone, which is mostly interest, dude, you're found with like your equity almost triples or maybe more over the course of that time just by holding, right? Like it's how generational wealth is built and maintained.
Exactly, it goes back to what Danny was talking about, and the big question is, can you be patient? That's the biggest thing.
Patience.
Is that just be patient. Let this market or let this asset class do its job. I mean, we talk about it all the time, a book called Psychology of Money, and Danny and I, a lot of us all have read that book, and you know, what did it say? Warren Buffett, after 60 is when he made, I think he's worth $85 billion, and he's made 80 of his $85 billion after 60.
Yep.
He's no better than anybody else, except the only thing different that he has done is be patient, have time. He just old, you know, and didn't sell and just stayed at it. So I'm not saying he didn't sell, but we just got to be patient.
I think the thing is, we all know this, social media, especially over the last couple of years, all these people, I've made how much money on the monkey EFTs and you know, the e-commerce making a ton, which you can do, but anybody who just did it as a game just to get rich quick, you know, suffered the back end of it quickly. I mean, they lost all that money. You make it a business, you be patient, as you said, you buy for cash flow, pay down the principal, and you'll do pretty well.
Dude, everything speculative is a gamble.
Yeah.
Right? Speculation is gambling.
Yep.
And all that garbage that has been all rampant for the past 3-4 years is all garbage. It's not a real business.
Yeah.
Right? Rolling the dice at a casino isn't a business model, right? Buying a lottery ticket is not a business model. Having sound foundational principles to build a business and following through and executing on a daily basis over an extended period of time is a good business model.
Yep.
And that's all you got to do in order to win in real estate. Real estate's this equalizer of dummies, right? There's a lot of people who are not smarter than any of us who have bigger portfolios than us because they just did exactly what they're talking about, what Kelly's talking about. Is just bought and then held, and they were patient, and they had a long timeline on their a lot of runway on their timeline.
It's really one of the only you know, investments that you could do that with. You can go play in the stock market, like you said, crypto. You got all these other. You have a real asset that if you pay attention to it and water it, it's going to grow.
Yeah.
It just takes that time. But
Well, and so much of it comes down to what your goal is. But I will say, on a side note, there was an actual legitimate lottery playing business. A mathematician and teacher figured out that the odds were in their favor, and so they exploited that, raised money for it, and would buy hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tickets and rake in $500,000, $750,000 in prize money. And the state caught on fairly quickly and changed the odds, because it was almost like walking into a casino, right? If the casino would pay out 60% of the time, you'd be there all day.
Yeah.
But the fact that they pay out 40 to 48% means you all go in and lose.
Over time, it's predictable.
It's funny.
Right?
But
if you're on that side of the business, that is a real business, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about this. You know, we've talked about this
Yeah.
a lot. You know, be on the casino business side.
Wait, so are we starting in casino?
Yes.
I've done some reading on it. But what I was going to say is it comes down to what your personal goal is. And I always use the example of, you know, two different people, and, you know, one person has a life goal of going on the super nice beach vacation in the Caribbean island, right? You got to fly there, you got to pay for an expensive hotel. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have someone who their ideal vacation is, you know, driving up north and camping for the weekend. Those two trips cost a drastic dollar amount difference, but both trips are awesome and both trips are fun, and it just depends which trip you want to go on. And that personal goal is really the most important thing you need to figure out before you make that first investment, right? Because there is the more opportunistic investment where maybe you're buying a property and you're renovating the whole thing and you're putting a lot of money into it, in order to increase the value a lot. Or you're buying that property that's on the best corner, it's got a great interior, it's really nice, and you're just gonna rent it and make a little bit of money each month. And so I think that goal you need to figure out first before you start investing, because that's gonna drive not only how much money you make off of the investment, but what sort of challenges are you willing to stomach to make sure you keep going when a challenge comes up, because you will have one. So if you don't want the contractor to leave in the middle of the night, then you shouldn't be doing this. If you're okay if a tenant leaves because you have the best house on the best street in the best school district and you could fill it no problem, then that seems like a great investment for you. So
I think
know that and work backwards.
I love what you said, and to pivot real quick from the financial talk of, I read in Italy, a couple of books I read was Die with Zero and Living Forward. And both of them are like spot on. It's like putting together basically your life plan. Have that life plan together. What is it you want to hit? What is it you want to achieve? Whether it's travel or learn an instrument or different language. Because a lot of times, as you mentioned, you're like, I want to, someone may be like, I want to make $100 million. Well, why? Your dream life, when you actually look at the whole thing, 5 million may be enough to hit all your goals in life for your life plan if you actually work from like the end backwards. And
well, the best part is it's just numbers.
Yeah.
And everything in life has a number.
Yep.
Do you just want to read a book? Average cost of a book, $19. Pretty easy to go make $20. Everything has a number, and so going through that exercise of like, what do you want to do in the next 10 years and 50 years, and like, you can come up with what that number is per month, what that number is in a net worth, and you can figure out what you need to do to get from A to, we'll call it Z or somewhere down that line, double Z, I don't know.
No, I love it. And when you really think about life from that perspective, I don't know, to me it's a little less scary. Like when you're trying to go after things, and I look at it a couple different ways. I'm like, all right, I want to do this because I want to accomplish big things and be successful in my head, to me, which means just doing things that change the world, things that change, people around me. But you're right. And then it's the other aspect of it. I was like, what do I actually really need in life to be happy? What's that number? What do I, I want to go to Italy for 2 months. That's kind of expensive. So, but you're right. It's that certain number that you put aside. You figure it out and kind of work backwards from there, and that can kind of hedge what kind of risk you're willing to take. Love that perspective. I wanted to ask this question. Let's pivot a little bit to the economy and where we're at right now, and raising of capital. So, have you seen, or what effects have you seen, especially nowadays? I know, Kelly, you touched upon it with your adjustments on the PIC fund for your investors, but when it comes to raising capital for commercial deals or raising capital for investors for Rehab Wallet, what do you can go and get a T-bill and make 6, 7, 8%. You can now, because interest rates are high on the lending side, obviously you can make a little bit more money in a lot simpler and protected types of investments. How are you seeing that affect? I'll kind of open up the floor to whoever you want to take this one, but how do you see it affecting your business and being able to raise capital now versus a year or two ago?
I think it's a certain challenge, something new, right? The T-bill thing, it will go away at some point. And so as an investor, right, if my goal is to make 5% on my money, well, I can do that this year. I could sit back and do nothing, learn nothing, meet no new people, and then next year I'm probably not going to make 5% because that's going to go bye-bye. So I think you still need to be active in looking at investments, thinking about things. But if your goal is to make 5, like you can do that and be done and go read your book and put your feet up or be in Italy for 2 months. So the environment of raising capital has changed to some extent. There's still a lot of equity and capital out there to be deployed, and a high level of interest for good quality deals. And so I think you can still raise money. We have consistently done that throughout this year, and we have absolutely beefed up our communication with our investor and our network of people just to talk about what we're seeing, how we're looking at deals, how we're keeping our fundamentals the same, and why there are still good opportunities out there. And at the end of the day, if you can find a deal that works and hits your goal as an investor, and the interest rate might be 7%, or it might be 6%, or it might be 8%, or it might be 12%, or it could be 14% if you're doing a rehab wallet loan. But if it meets your goal, you can still do it. And so there's still good opportunities out there. I always remind myself too of just like the Buffett saying, or the early investor saying of, when there's blood on the street, buy real estate. Right now, people are fairly emotional and they're sitting on the sidelines, not doing much. To me, that's like a sign of like, hey, overcome your fear feeling inside and like go and do something, because now is the time to do it. And we've got a good runway ahead of us as long as we're buying with the right fundamental and focus. So it's still a good environment to raise money in. You have to have a great relationship with your investors, and they have to know you, like you, and trust you, and present sound deals, and you'll have a good outcome from it.
This last 2 days, we have been together with a lot of potential investors coming into our debt fund, as well as potential people that might want to learn how to do private lending. Okay, it's a mix of the two. Some of the investors actually came to the private lending intensive to learn exactly the way we're doing, because they just want to learn a little bit more about the fund. And talking to them, and spend a lot of time with our director of investor relation, and spent a lot of time really delving into this exact thing. And Danny mentioned it, and we kind of put it in a triangle, and it was like, is know, like, and trust, and where do you think the number of people are that, where does the investor sit that comes into our fund? Is it because they know you, or like you, or trust you? First and foremost, they gotta know you, right? So if it's social media, like you was talking about, just like 10x on communication.
Not everyone needs to have granite countertops and stainless steel appliances in their home, whether you're renting it or you own it. There are plenty of affordable places, and affordable is a very relative term. There are plenty of available jobs. I see more "we're hiring" signs on businesses than I walk by and see no sign at all. Almost every other door somewhere that I go by is hiring. And if you just take into consideration an average rent of $1,500 a month, that might be really high for some people, and that might be really low for other people. But $1,500 for a month in Charleston County, you can find a wonderful, safe, nice home to be in. And $1,500, 3 times your income is typically the average. You're at $4,500 times 12. You're looking at maybe 50 to 60 grand in income needed to live there. There's a lot of opportunity out there to go and make 50 or 60 grand, because I know what the average household incomes are for the 3-mile radiuses in every pocket of Charleston County. So I think it comes back to, the person. So are you a person who's managing your money? Are you buying a bunch of stuff that you don't need? Are you spending it by, I don't know what people spend their money on. I talk to Kelly all the time about this. I was like, if I could just get like a download of all credit card transaction history, I would have $1 billion business because I know what people are spending money on, and likely at the top of that list, it's just like garbage
Amazon,
stuff.
bro. It's just too easy.
Amazon and lattes.
Yeah.
So, I say that to, Charleston's a great place to be. It's why people are continuing to move here. There's jobs here. There's houses that people can afford. You need to manage your money and your expectations. And if you want something above your money, change your expectations or do something different or do something more.
If you truly are only having a 3% increase in your income, then
That's not the market's fault.
It's
right?
not the market's fault. There are so many changes that you can make in order to make that happen, or make some moves, and not make so much. But so many of those decisions where it might be that I'm buying this, or I got to go here, or I can buy the $7 or $10 latte, and don't fuss about it, be victimized about it. Just don't buy them. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. If you do not, if you cannot budget it, it's not yet. Again, we go back to the patience piece. It's hard, and it's super hard. And again, it's different lens coming out of my mouth now versus 25 years ago or 30 years ago. But it's the same true concept. Stay consistent and be patient. Stay consistent and be patient.
Yeah.
Do it over and over again and be patient.
Consistency, for sure.
And not to put you on the spot, so 45% increase in rents over the past, however, 3-5 years. What was the home price appreciation over that same period of time? Do you know?
It depends on area, but you're talking pretty similar. I mean, you're talking.
I would say.
Yeah.
Like all these prices have gone bananas.
I'd say it's got to be at least that 40-50% over a 3 to 5 year. And again, obviously depends on where you're at. Some have doubled. You go to IOP, probably some of these beaches, you're talking double.
Mine are 100%.
Yeah. So I think it can kind of vary from those angles. And you're absolutely right. Well, first of all, credit cards are easy to get. You get your hand on a credit card and just charge everything, and just think like you don't have to think about it until that bill comes in. Then
It's
you make
not
your
real
minimum
money.
payments. It's not real money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fake. So I'm gonna use that credit card. I'm not saying it's right, but how many people do you know? I mean, I know I budgeted when I was younger, but I don't have a lot of friends who budgeted or really paid attention to their money. And I've heard this line so many times of, yeah, I'm struggling, but I worked really hard this week, so I deserve it. I deserve this. I deserve that. And it's like, all right, well, you can go and spend your money on that, but you're just going to set you back further again. And the other point I want to bring here is, we're all entrepreneurs here. We all took a risk. I don't know about you guys, but I struggled for a couple of years taking my risk. I wasn't really making much money, and I had to take some big gambles, and lost some money here and there, and I had to struggle for 2-3 years to get to where I'm at now, which is I still have a lot of growing to go. Assuming you guys did too. I don't think people are willing to take a risk or struggle. That's the problem. I think a lot of people I'm expected to make this, I'm expected to do this. I'm not willing to really take a risk or struggle for a little bit of time to live a better life on the back end.
The market does not respond to the value that you are. The
That you give
market
yourself.
responds to the value that you add.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I made $80,000 in my last job. Okay. How are you going to generate enough revenue or drive enough value for this business so that way you can show that you're worth $80,000? That means nothing to me how much you made at the last job or how much you made at whatever. It's I care about the value you add, not the value you are, right? Oh, hey, my last job I made $36,000 a year. Great. If you make me $400,000, I'll pay you $125,000 here. I don't care what your value was at the last job. I care about the value you add. Mm-hmm. And I think there's this entitlement factor, right? Obviously, where people are like, oh, well, I think I'm worth this much, and I'm holding out for a management position like I'm friggin' Cousin Eddie or something from Christmas Vacation, right? And it's like, what? Who? What? And the reality is, what is the value that you're adding? Mm-hmm. How are you bringing value to a business? If you bring a business $500,000 a year of additional revenue, you don't think that they pay you more money? You brought $2 million a year of additional revenue, you don't think they'd pay you more? Yes, they would. So get this idea. I think it's a disease and mindset across people. Like you mentioned it of the problem's not the market increasing by 45%. It's your value add of the value that you're not bringing to the market, it has not gone up by more than 3%. It's not the market's fault. It's your fault for not bringing more value.
I think it'll be interesting too, just as you think about like the job landscape out there. I think in 10 years or 20 years, there might not be a W-2 salary position anymore. I've been thinking about that recently, where it's just, for this job, we pay $2,000 for this activity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to do this activity and this activity and this, we pay this in return. This is because so many companies are having trouble, and especially as we've gone through this like remote working thing where, you know, I've heard the stories about somebody having 3 jobs because they work remote, and it's like they're supposed to be working 40 hours a week for this company, but they're doing 4 hours because they can get that task done quickly. And no fault to the person for getting their activity done in 4 hours that might take 40, but companies are going to catch on that, hey, this 40-hour-a-week managerial account manager position, we're no longer going to pay a W-2 salary for it. It's just going to be, if you do this job, you get this money.
Everyone will be 1099. It's like the gig economy takes over.
Yeah,
I
and
think-
it becomes a la carte.
It's a task economy.
I think
he's got some feet on. Like, I had a painting company in college, and so I go and, you know, I had a couple of my buddies working, and we'd go paint houses, and I would go and sell these jobs, and that's how we paid. It was like the doors were $300, right? And obviously, there's paint, there's overhead, there's margin that needs to be built in. So it's like, I'll pay the worker $100 to paint that door, whether it takes you an hour to paint that door or it takes you 6 hours to paint that door. You make $100, and it creates efficiencies. It creates people wanting to work faster because they're task paid instead of just hourly wage. So the people who want to win, dude, they rise straight to the top, right? And they're working more. And by the way, if it's done in a bad manner, you have to go back and do it on your own time. You have to go back and fix it on your own time. I'm not paying you more to go and fix the mistakes or the drips or the whatever on that door. Like, you have to go and eat that. So it creates this innate efficiency and effectiveness of, let me make sure that I do it well, I do it right, I don't waste time. I'm not taking a piss break. I'm not going to go hang out at the water cooler. I'm not going to go take a smoke break. I'm not take a long lunch, because I just want to go and knock out as many tasks as possible in order to then, move the needle forward. And then I control my value. I like it.
I like it a lot too.
I think it'd be pretty cool.
Because the pushback that you have from bringing people into an office after this flexibility world that we've been in is very, very, very difficult. And I get the flexibility. I love the fact that our employees can do that. But I know for sure that if I had everybody in an office, we'd be a lot more productive.
You know, the federal government just mandated that all government employees have to come back
It doesn't surprise me.
because
the banks are doing
the
that right
efficiency just fell off a
Yeah.
cliff.
And-
They just made
Wait,
it
a government employee's efficiently fell off?
Yeah, can you imagine? I actually
That's like-
expected
that's a
it to
small
be the
cliff it
exact
fell off.
same.
You mean the
curb?
Yeah, a curve, yeah. It tripped over the curve.
There's a certain level of a person that you can ensure that they are efficient in a certain, maybe you have to interview different, you interview better, interview more specific for that person if we're going to give them, give our team that flexibility. Hey, for every loan that you process, here's a fee per loan. Now, granted, there's third-party processors all the time, you know, but it goes back. I mean, it clicked with something about that clicked. It is something to think about. I mean, it does save, all of us are business people, right? It does save a lot of FICA match and all the matches we have to make on the back end of somebody being W-2 as business owners. It saves a lot of money there. Something to think about.
It's kind of happening too if you think about it. Well, first of all, you got like VAs doing specific tax, but fractional CFOs. These fractional employees coming in and helping run a company with the company rather than having to hire your own CFO, and you don't really have the money to spend, what, 150, 200 grand a year, depending on what you're going to pay that
Fractional
CFO.
HR. There's
Yeah,
fractional
fractional HR,
CEOs.
yeah.
There's
Exactly.
fractional COOs.
Yep.
Even, as weird as that is, but
So they're doing it at that level. I mean, it's not necessarily tax driven, but to some degree, it's you hire that fractional person that do those 2 or 3 things, and that's all you need them for. So
Yep.
I think it's interesting, and it could be. I think you're gonna really see people's true value pretty quick. You're not gonna be able to skate by anymore. Of just.
Well, I think we're going to find out that most people can't carry their weight.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're a bad guy because you're only paying people
Yeah.
for doing a task that they can't do. And then all of a sudden it's the business owner's fault or something. Like it might be your first day painting a house,
Yeah.
painting that door, and it might take you 6 hours.
Yeah.
And or 5 hours, and do easy math, $20 an hour. And then all of a sudden the second door that you paint, you did it in 4.5.
Yeah.
And then the next door, and 20 doors down the line, you can knock out a door in 2 hours. Now
So
you're
that
making
person
$50
has
an
a
hour.
$5 fee, and then you have someone who's a $2,000 fee.
They just need to
right?
understand that their value increases
Yeah.
as their productivity increases and as their skill set increases, right? Then they need to have that long-term vision. You know,
Well-
that's our job probably as the owner to paint that long-term vision of what this can look like and how they can grow. And
I don't
So this is
think-
just a big advertisement for TaskRabbit right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
TaskRabbit will be the single, source of finding jobs for the future.
Let's buy some
Yeah.
stock when this goes viral.
Yeah.
It's gonna
I
explode.
love the fact that your employees are all happy and
Yeah.
they have their flexibility and stuff. I love that about it. And we all have to and help them continue to grow, whether you're on a Teams call, and I think people can grow through that. I'm a little old school with that, but at least let me see your face and you need to see my face on some discussions and some teaching thing. I think it's very, very important to do that. So there's certain things that we need to put in place. Let them be flexible. Let us all be flexible, right? It's a great thing. I don't want to take it away at all. But at the same time, we got to be productive, and the KPIs are a big deal.
I don't think. Sorry, Danny. I don't think a lot of. I think a lot of our younger generation probably would be on board with something like this. You hear like the gig economy, the great resignation or whatever they were calling it. But basically, people just want to pivot. They just want to do 2 or 3 different things or take on smaller jobs. Or I was just listening to, I think it was Morning Brew, don't quote me on that, this morning, and there's a program called ETAs. I forget what it stands for, but basically a lot of these colleges are actually coming out now, and their students, their entrepreneur students, instead of creating a business, are going out and buying businesses out of college. And some of these colleges are backing them up, helping them buy businesses so that they could be an entrepreneur without taking the risk, taking those 2 or 3 years of the risk away and taking on baby boomers business or whatever the case is. So this is something that's happening. I think they said, like, don't quote me on this, but like Stanford and some of the bigger named colleges. So it's like you already kind of see that shift happening to some degree.
So you transition out of single family or what have you might do. And nowadays I'm very passive on the real estate side. And I love that I am. I'm happy that I am. Been there, done that for almost 30 years of being more self-managing and so forth. So I am a big LP investor deep with both of these men right here. And GP side of it, raise a little money, and at the same time, that's my long-term side. So, and it's different about your age. I think you got to think about it as a short-term, long-term thing. You don't want to be too long-term. If you're in your mid-50s or 60s or what have you, long-term, you need everything short-term. You want more short-term so that you can enjoy it before physically you can't, right? And so I don't want too many things. It was different when I was in my 30s and 40s. I'm in my mid-50s now, so my long-term isn't 20 years from now. My long-term is in the 5 to 7 year apartment complexes. So when Danny and Dan at PassiveInvesting.com decides to sell an apartment complex in 25 months because we got our value that we wanted, I love that. I can make a decision to cash out, use it, because I'm in my mid-50s, use it to go enjoy my life, or B, I can roll it over and we can continue to let that momentum continue to hit. So I think age has something to do with it on what's short-term and long-term. But for me, it's distributions within a business, and then I take those short-term distributions and then double them into long-term gains. But I keep my long-term not so stretched out as long.
I'm personally not focused on short-term money right now. I mean, just where I'm at in my stage with getting consistent capital off the ground as well. So my short-term money is really just my passive investing as an LP, primarily with PassiveInvesting.com. So that's a nice to have. But I'd say my midterm is building consistent capital to the point where we're able to really start taking those solid distributions. Right, that then will become the short term. But long term, I've got my real estate portfolio where I have, I think assets that I'll hold on to forever, right? Properties that I'll never sell, I'll continue to write up the appreciation, pay down principal, refi when it's the right time, pull that cash out tax-free, deploy that into more, short-term type projects, maybe some flips, maybe some, value-add multifamily stuff. But I think I'm long on real estate, right? Long on real estate, and I think long on the investment of my time and human capital into the development of our business, right? That is where we're developing long-term enterprise value, right? Which the appreciation of real estate over time, paying down a principal is amazing, but I think the multiple you'll get on building an enterprise that has real value, whether that's in, distributions over a long period of time or in an eventual sale, that's, long-term wealth plan.
A lot of millionaires basically invest in real estate. The billionaires are 100 millionaires, the private equity and the businesses.
One of my early mentors said, millionaires and billionaires are made from equity in deals, right? Meaning both businesses and in real estate. And that's how you make millions of dollars. And I think as I've grown, I've always been a real estate guy, and I've always been equity rich, but cash poor. Until I started businesses also. And the businesses generated the actual cash and that I could then live off of. And then I didn't have to worry about pulling cash flow distributions or worried about taking money off the table in the long-term assets. I could just leave it there, reinvest into the property, roll it into more property, let it keep on compounding, use it to pay down more principal and grow that way. And I think that's a very simple method. It has some source of income that can pay you right now. Hopefully it's a business, and hopefully it's something that, like, if you had to turn it up and said, I need to make $100,000 in the next 30 days, you can essentially put in the work, and you have a vehicle that is scalable enough to be able to write any size check and generate any amount of revenue if possible. Like, you can't do that with a coffee shop, right? You can do that with some sort of e-commerce store, some sort of consulting business, some sort of remote type of a business that has no cap or limit on it. So I'd be looking for something like that, a one-to-many kind of a business, something that has those multiple multiplier effects. Because the other thing is, I could take a $1 million building or $10 million building and let's call it $1 million property, and turn it into a $1.5 million property. Very feasible to do in real estate, but it's hard to push it really beyond that. I can take a $1 million business and turn it into a $10 million business or a $50 million business, and the multiples that can come from that. And then you exit this, roll money into more real estate, right? And then you can leverage it. Like, there's benefits of both, and you need to be doing both, right? It's not one or the other, which one's better. It's you need to have some sort of business income, and you need to have some sort of real estate holdings, because it's both short-term and long-term.
Love that.
It's just like the rich dad, poor dad little grid of assets and liabilities, and then income and expenses. Like, figure out how to generate income and have it go to your asset bucket versus hitting expenses or liabilities first. So I think so much of it has to do with what each person's goal is. Again, that's the real theme here, depending on what level you want to get to, where you want to be. Short-term wise, I always think about having, reserves in the bank of 12 months at least, or 18 months to cover your entire cost of living. So, that lets me sleep good at night, and if nothing else comes in, we'll figure out where to go and do something in 18 months. And that would be the short-term side of it. Long-term, I echo a lot of the same things in here of having business equity as well as real estate equity to build from there. And I had another point that I wanted to make. Businesses, multiple business units, people, components, growth.
Scalability of the business versus scalability of a building.
Scalability.
Like, here's the other thing though. That $1 million building isn't going to go to zero.
Yeah.
A $1 million business can go to zero,
Yep.
right? Like there's more upside, but there's more downside. Over here, I don't know, a $1 million building might only go down to 850 or something, like you're not going to lose your, which is why people preserve wealth over here. But you can make a lot more and scale a lot more, I think. But I think you need to have both, because if you're only focused on cash flow or cash and your annual income, then you're not building any long-term wealth and real long-term equity. And I've seen good friends of mine who always were cash rich but equity poor. They didn't have any enterprise value to their businesses. They just chased income as opposed to chase. And then I was always heavy on chasing equity. I had a big balance sheet, but guess what? Not much cash in the bank. And it wasn't until I had both where it was like, wow, I can actually sleep at night. I'm probably a little bit more. I don't have 18 months in reserves. Like I get anxious if I have too much money sitting in the bank, and I like redeploy, but I buy assets with it, right? I invested as an LP into different deals.
Jet skis are assets, right?
Or most of their value.
It's a great ROI.
I know how to seller finance and get my money back. So.
Return on fund. That's
It takes a learning curve or a level of comfort to kind of say, yeah, I have this cash in the bank, but I can't think about it because I'm going to be irritated by it, but it's there and it's nice to have.
Well, we'll pitch the debt fund. That's where we talk about it exactly, is where we put the short-term money inside this debt fund, because it's a 90-day liquidity option. As partners, we do the same thing. Because what happens if one of us get killed as we go home? And our wives are just, they're not making money, or they just aren't concerned. They're not even interested. Mine's not even interested in the business really, except what it brought. And so, but I need to give her 18 months, and Danny and I talk about this a lot. I need to give her 18 months or at least a year of reserves that she can just go get out, call Danny, go get out of our fund and put in there and let her look at it.
And
While she gets herself situated, get your legs underneath her, you know. That was my main why, is to keep in a major, you know, till when you start seeing people pass, you're like, shit, that could really, really happen. And then shame on us for not putting stuff in place for that.
Not even could, will. I mean, we're all going to die at some point.
Absolutely.
So
I agree. I think, I don't know, my perspective was cash in the bank, but that is a liquidity type of an account where you can make something more than just whatever they're paying on a money market. You know, like, so, you know, what were your contributions to a Roth IRA? Guess what? That can be your emergency account, right? And you can pull it out tax-free, or you know, no tax, no penalties, no anything, no matter, regardless of what your age is. So finding some things like that, I do agree.
Appropriate vehicles for
I
it.
have more than that. 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
If you include all those, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything short term that you could really just pick the phone up and get it back in a couple of weeks, you know.
Or how long does it take for a life insurance policy to pay out?
Not even
A few
days.
Good question.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
days.
Yeah. So like,
unless there's any
Days.
question of
Investigation.
Yeah.
A good company is literally coming to your door with it, literally.
Yeah.
My
I mean-
dad, we did that.
I mean, I have a big term life insurance policy, right? Like, I'm not a big believer in whole life policies, or even, like, I have one for my kids because their mortality rate's so low that like every dollar in goes straight to the cash value of the account. But for me, I was like, you know what? I have all these other assets, and to me, life insurance is supposed to bridge the gap from where I am today to retirement age or whatever, right? And so like, I have a term life insurance policy that's, you know, pennies on the dollar compared to a whole life policy. It pay out my family, pay off the beach house, put plenty of money in the bank, and actually they could take that money and invest it at a 6 to 8% return and pay for triple what our lifestyle is, you know? And so that is kind of like another
That's
worst
a great
case
point.
scenario,
That's a
right?
great point.
And then we don't have to sell any assets, and then the team doesn't have to worry about firing a bunch of people. Like, we can hold those, and that bridges the gap until the kids are 20 years old, and their investment trust starts making then distributions to them, and the properties then, guess what, are paid down another 10, 15 years at the same time. And so that's always been like my short-term, long-term thought process around some of that.
That's
So-
true.
Good strategies there with
Yes,
life insurance and other aspects. I finally remembered what I was going to say. It was a simple little exercise. I did the math on it of going back to like base, hit, investments and thinking about rehab wallet or the debt fund paying out 8% to investors. If you take $5 million and compound it at 8% annually and you just forget about it for 30 years, I think it's like $68 million, which is a fine chunk of money to have in 30 years with a base hit, every month, every quarter, every year, and it just, 8% does not sound like a awesome return to people, but when you compound it at that rate, it is way better than a 12% return in the stock market or timing something. And so
what's the initial investment?
$5 million.
$5 million turns into $68 million. Well, it's like,
Taking no distributions, let it stay in there and let it compound.
and how long does it compound?
To 30 years.
No, I mean like
Monthly.
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 Monthly, yeah.
8% 8% annualized return.
APY that ends up being
Yeah.
9, 10, right?
It's roughly 9 in the first year. It's like 8.89
Yep.
if I did the math correctly. But then it's like 9.6 in year 2, and then it's like 10.5 in year 3, and then it's 11, and then
Don't sleep on the value of compound interest.
But it takes too long, guys. I want to be a millionaire today. Yeah, that's the problem.
Again,
Do that short line.
Well,
long-term.
the other thing I was thinking about was like, okay, $5 million. How do you make $5 million? And it's not complicated. It's a lot of hard work, right? In 10 years, anybody can accumulate $5 million, and just doing the quick math on it, right? $5 million per year, you'd be making $500,000. In order to make $500,000 in a single year, you need to flip 10 homes and make 50 per home. Not complicated, a ton of hard work. I'm not raising my hand to go flip 10 houses in 12 months, but it can be done. And we know a lot of people who have done 10, 20 some plus homes in a year. So
Absolutely. I did it myself for 18 years. I mean, I wanted to do that hard work. I didn't know any better back then. And I'm not saying it's even a bad thing.
shoot, 200 over 18, you're doing more than 10 a year.
I did a lot.
That's a lot.
But for that same exact reason, I had to figure out, then, spend a lot of time in corporate America, and then I wanted to get out, and I wanted to start.
How
this
can you
momentum
generate cash to invest?
with with the skill set that I had, and I didn't have a lot of business intellect, but I had a lot of hard work. I had a lot of experience that way, and anybody here at this table has that in them if you just will do it. So that's a great example. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it a way to get there? Absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to learn,
And not just at this table, that person too.
Absolutely.
yeah, if you want to learn, go buy a bucket of paint and a paintbrush and knock on some doors and offer to paint.
Yeah.
And you'll figure out what it takes.
And I hope you enjoyed this conversation here today. Honestly, it was really great having a discussion about the state of the economy here in Charleston, kind of macroeconomics, microeconomic talks here today with some amazing people in the lending world, people in the commercial real estate world, to get a lot of different perspectives. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some great nuggets out of it. And if you'd like to get more content like this, follow me on Instagram at DanRivers_RCG or on Facebook at Rivers Capital Group. Enjoy it.